most chance to make an impact. So it's the most important to know what is going on around us. Okay. Welcome to This Week in the Triangle. My name is Stephen Horn. I'm an independent journalist, and we are here to talk about local news in the Greater Triangle area of North Carolina. And this week we have a couple interesting stories. We have Wake County, Durham County, and I believe Franklin County as well. We have some interesting stuff going on out there. So our first story is an anti-drug trafficking operation. Well, it's called Operation Exploding Kilo. Now that is the name that was included in the Franklin County Sheriff Kevin White's statement about the event. The Wake County Sheriff's Office did not include that interesting, exciting name, but apparently Operation Exploding Kilo, they arrested around they arrested reportedly 17 individuals. Most of these have been charged with trafficking drugs, including opium, heroin, and or cocaine. There are some houses that are raided in the Wake Forest area, so it seems like this was focused on northern Wake County and crossing over into Franklin County. Um, so we have the defendants here. They range from 20-year-old Marxavier Richardson to 66-year-old Sophia Jeffries. Now, once again, people are innocent until proven guilty in America, but these are the defendants. I'm not sure how many 66-year-olds there are out there dealing illicit substances, but this is what this woman has been accused of, and it appears that some of these 17 defendants might have been related. In addition to Sophia Jeffries, there are 4 other defendants with the last name of Jeffries as well. So maybe a little bit of a family connection going on there. And the defendants also have something in common. I pulled down the mugshots for, I believe, 14 out of the 17, and they all happen to be Black. Make it that way you will. And once again, you can find all of these sources at thisweekinthetriangle.com. I send out I send out a newsletter every week with a roundup of some of the news that happened during the week in the Greater Triangle area. And I also release and publish original articles, such as the one about the illegal alien who is accused of killing Wake County Sheriff Deputy Ned Bird in 2022. Got an article about that this week that we will cover. Once again, that's thisweekinthetriangle.com. You can get the emails in your inbox if you don't happen to show up when I decide to do a live stream about local news. But if you are here, congratulations, welcome. This is what I'm going to be talking about. And our next story up here is the Trump Department of Justice dismisses a disparate impact lawsuit over the Durham Fire Department entrance exam. So last year, around October, there was an announcement by the Durham Fire Department and the Department of Justice saying that the Department of Justice had filed a lawsuit against the city of Durham because the entrance exam for the Durham Fire Department, there were too many Black candidates failing. Okay. It was something like a third of Black candidates failed the exam as opposed to about 10-11% of white candidates. So under the disparate impact doctrine, any hiring standard that disparately impacts Black people or some other protected minority is illegal. So but the thing is with these disparate impact lawsuits is that in many cases, such as this one, we can see exactly what the criteria is. So they're not saying no Black people can be firefighters in the city of Durham. But what they did ask them questions about was basic skills like reading, writing, math, map reading, communication. And these questions that the Black applicants were failing to answer at a higher rate were not super complicated questions, about 4th grade level for the reading and writing and math comprehension. And if you look at the proficiency scores of students coming out of the Durham public schools, there is a disparity there. The Black students are not scoring as well on the standardized test as the white and Asian students. So the 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 is really sort of a pipe dream to come up with a test that is both predictively valid, it's measuring something real, and is also has equitable outcomes with each racial group passing or failing it at the highest amount. I'm not sure how many Asian applicants they have for the Durham Fire Department, but if they did have them, they would probably be failing the tests at a even lower rate than white applicants. Why? I don't know, but it's a finding that has been replicated across many fields, whether it's the SAT, MCAT, the standardized college tests, or whether it's a standardized test that you know that they give to children in K through 12. We see different demographics do not score the same on these tests. So basically, if you apply the disparate impact doctrine in the way that the Biden administration had, basically any test at all that is at all correlated to intelligence, to problem solving, is illegal because racial demographics do not pass those tests at the same rates. But the Trump administration, good news if you prefer people to be hired based on merit. The Trump administration has dropped this lawsuit against the Durham Fire Department, as well as a number of other departments, including ones challenging the use of physical fitness tests for fire departments. I believe there were a couple of fire. I believe South Bend, in Indiana, was one of the police departments that was challenged, or they said, your physical fitness standards are being failed more often by female or by certain minority candidates, and so therefore these tests are racist. These tests are illegal. Now, I don't know about you, but I think it's it's pretty common sense that firefighters, should be able to read, write, interpret maps. I think it's pretty common sense that law enforcement should have some physical fitness. Especially if they're going to be out there arresting people, doing law enforcement things. We want them to be physically fit, and I don't really care if certain protected classes, protected demographics are failing those tests at higher rates. Doesn't really matter to me. So this, so the in response to the lawsuit being dismissed, the Durham mayor basically said, "Hey, we in the Durham City Council are still all about equity. So this test that the Durham Fire Department was using will still be removed, even without the Department of Justice lawsuit. That's kind of expected because Durham, if you're familiar with the local area, Durham County, I believe it's like the second most democratic jurisdiction in the state. So it's a very liberal jurisdiction. The city of Durham especially. So yeah, we can expect they're going to get rid of this test anyway, but it seems that they will not be paying out the $1 million plus in reparations and also priority hires for those applicants who failed the exam. But they'll still be getting rid of the exam. They'll still be trying to replace it with a test that I guess that all protected demographics will pass at the same rate if they can find one. And so our next story up here is happens to be another story from Durham, which is the Durham Public Schools celebrate radical resistance to whiteness by critical race theory promoter. So this week, the Durham Public Schools were had a social media campaign for some sort of hair discrimination. I believe it's related to what's called the Crown Act, which is trying to get these laws passed regarding hair discrimination. And so they had one such post by Dr. Rhonda Taylor Bullock, who is a local critical race theory educator and contractor. She does the sort of implicit bias presentations and whatnot to tell white people basically how inherently bad they are. But they had a post to her where she said, "I did the big chop right after I graduated from undergrad in 2004, and I've never regretted the decision. I majored in African American studies and English and found a deep appreciation for my own heritage and a radical resistance to whiteness." Now, you put any other race in there, a radical resistance to blackness, a radical resistance to Asianness, a radical resistance to Hispanicness, and you can best believe that quote would not be on the page of a single public school district in America. But if it's a radical resistance to whiteness, no problem with it. And I think that that just sort of illustrates the the current climate um in America. So Bullock, she's a self-described critical race scholar. She has done implicit bias presentations for the Wake County School Board, one county over. Um, basically telling them that if you're white, you have these implicit biases against black people, against whatever intersectional hierarchy there is. And so she was actually brought to the, I believe it was the DC or the White House in 2003. She was honored by Vice President Kamala Harris for her work, as an anti-racist educator. So this is the kind of people. There's certain I think they're sometimes referred to as race grifters. They get paid basically to lecture white people under the guise of anti-racism to say white people are bad. That's sort of how it goes. And so there's a couple protests going on this week that I was watching. There's one in Lewisburg, about 9 Hispanics. This time they have an American flag instead of the Mexican flags. We've seen a lot of immigration protests in the area. They had an American flag, and they're out there to support illegal immigration. Not just immigration, not just Hispanics, but illegal immigration specifically because they're out there saying no papers, no fear. So basically, they think they should be able to come to our country, sneak across the border, and not have any fear of the law being enforced against them. But as we can see in many Hispanic communities right now, there is fear of ICE, of law enforcement coming after them and throwing people out of the country who are violating our immigration laws. They're also saying, we are here, we're not going. That's a translation of one of their Hispanic chants in Spanish that they were saying. There's also a protest to support Ukraine in downtown Raleigh. Um, I believe that was hundreds of attendees. So this was before the contentious meeting between President Zelensky and President Trump and Vice President Vance. But this is I believe the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, which was a very major escalation in the prior conflict that had been going on there. This is the 3-year anniversary. If I believe there were some Ukrainian sort of demonstrations back in 2022 when it was first going on. Some of these are so-called Ukrainian Americans who are out there. People with Ukrainian ancestry, Ukrainian ties, but it's also just general non-Ukrainian supporters who also support Ukraine in their fight against Russia. There's also Ukrainian flags at another protest, which was seemingly unrelated, but outside the Tesla showroom on Glenwood Avenue in Raleigh. Um, I believe there were over 100 protesters out there to protest Musk, to protest the Department of Government Efficiency, just generally to protest the Trump administration. But once again, as we have seen at these other anti-Trump and anti-Musk protests, there's a lot of Nazi imagery, saying Musk is a Nazi. Don't buy the swastika, stuff like that. And there's also a protest at Duke. So there are some leftist and pro-Palestine groups. They're protesting also against the Trump administration, specifically the anti-DEI orders, basically protesting and telling the Duke administration, hey, we don't want you to enforce these orders here. When it comes to federal funding, I don't believe Duke really has a choice. They could try to replace the federal funding for DEI related programs with their own private funding, but that might be a lot of money for them, as we have seen in some cases. These dollar amounts on the federal grants has been very high, and it's unlikely that private organizations could just replace all this money being spent by the federal government, because it is a huge, massive amount. And our final story for this week is regarding the murder of a Wake County deputy. Ned Bird in 2022, and specifically the extradition of a Mexican illegal alien who is one of the two brothers accused with his murder. So this week, the Trump administration secured um, the extradition of 29 defendants from Mexico. Many of these are accused of being leaders or managers of drug cartels. Um, Many of them are accused of serious crimes, such as murder in this case. And many of these had been going through extradition proceedings for a long time. The specific um, Mexican in this case, related to this North Carolina murder, is named Alder Alfonso Marin Sotelo. So they had been asking for his extradition for 21 months. The Trump administration comes in, talks to the Mexican government, passes these executive orders designating the cartels as terrorist organizations. And what do you know? They're able to get the Mexican government to hand over these defendants, many of whom they had been asking for a long time. So it just kind of shows, um, so, sometimes we can think that certain things are just part of the policy, part of how it goes, but then something changes, and then all of a sudden, oh, they hand over all of these criminals that we were asking for. So basically, now that Alder Alfonso has been turned over, he'll be facing trial for murder in Wake County. So Alder Alfonso and his older brother Arturo have been charged with murdering Deputy Ned Bird in 2022. So basically, at around 11 p.m. on the night of August 11th, 2022, Deputy Bird was patrolling in a rural area of southeast Wake County. He stopped to investigate a parked truck. And so Bird was a canine officer, but he left his dog in the vehicle. So it appears that he was not expecting trouble when he got out of the car to investigate this truck. And we don't know exactly what happened, but his dashboard camera captures the audio of 6 shots being fired. The autopsy showed Bird was shot 4 times, once in the chest, 3 times in the back of the head. Okay, this was a deliberate, intentional murder. And so uh, this this case is pretty astonishing to me because it involves not just these 2 illegal aliens, Alder Alfonso and Arturo, but it also involves 2 more of their siblings who are also illegal aliens in our country illegally, who one of them was charged with accessory after the fact. The other one has pled guilty to helping one of these brothers escape prison. That's how Alder Alfonso ended up in Mexico, being pursued for extradition, is because he was being held pre-trial in the United States, and his sister helped him break out of jail, and he was able to make it to Mexico before being apprehended. So Arturo, the older of these 2 brothers, um, basically the Wake County Sheriff's Department, they're able to track their phones. They ditch their old phones, they get new phones, they're able to track those new phones as well. And so these brothers were arrested in Burke County just a few days after the murder. And so after Arturo is arrested, he says, "Oh, I was there. I was out in the field hunting deer with my AK-47 in the middle of the night. But it wasn't me who shot Deputy Bird. It was my brother. He was over by the truck. He shot Deputy Bird. It wasn't me." So basically, he's confirming that he was there. He's confirming that his brother was there, but he's saying, no, it was my brother, Alder Alfonso, that committed the murder, not me. And so I believe Arturo is still being held in jail. So so Arturo had been apprehended crossing the border illegally at least once in 2010. He voluntarily returned to Mexico at that time, and sometime since then, who knows when he slipped back into our country and has been apparently living in North Carolina illegally for at least 6 years prior to the murder. So, Alder Alfonso, after they had been arrested in Burke County, he was charged with a federal crime related to a traffic stop the year before in 2021, where he was caught with an illegal firearm. If you're an illegal immigrant, you can't just be going around driving around with firearms. So once this murder had happened, he was arrested. he was charged with this federal crime, so he was being held federally in a Virginia jail. And that is when he was able to break out. He got one of his cellmates to contact a family member to arrange to have his sister park a vehicle near the jail so that when he got out, he would get in that vehicle, drive out. And this plan was successful. The prison guards didn't even notice that he was gone from the prison until over 24 hours after he had escaped. So he got a head start. He was able to make it back to Mexico before being reapprehended by Mexican authorities in the state of Guerrero. Okay, I'm probably saying that wrong, but that's in southern Mexico. So Aldo Alfonso was 25 years old at the time of his arrest in 2022, and he was reportedly living in Garner, um, which I didn't mention. But Arturo, the older brother charged in the murder, he had a residence in Raleigh. And so the third sibling who aided in this jail escape was named Adriana Marin Sotelo. She was the oldest of these siblings. She was 31 years old at the time she was arrested. And I believe it was also 2022. No, 2023. So she was 31 in 2023, the oldest of these four siblings. So so after she received a call from, one of the fellow inmates of her brother, she purchased a red Mustang for $3,000 and handed it over to a family member of this inmate who drove it up to Virginia, where it was parked so that it could be used by, this accused murderer to escape once he got out of jail. And so she has pled guilty to this crime. And in exchange for pleading guilty and giving testimony, the federal government agreed not to deport her. So we have an illegal alien who aided her alleged murderer brother to escape from jail, and she is allowed to remain in the country because she, gave some testimony about the prison escape. So she reportedly lived out in High Point. She was sentenced to 10 months in prison. This was in November 2023, so I'm sure she's out now. So apparently she's probably back to living in High Point with her four children. And so the fourth sibling who was charged in this was only 18 when he was arrested in 2022. He was out in Winston-Salem. And so basically what happened is that he had been in contact with his two older brothers after the murder. When the police arrested him, they found that he was driving a vehicle with an illegal tag, fictitious tag, and he also had ammunition in his vehicle, which is illegal since once again this fourth sibling was an illegal alien. So, when he was arrested in 2022 after the murder, he said, "Oh, my brother paid me $300 to get rid of this truck." So the police were able to track down the truck that the two older brothers had been driving at the time, and Rolando Marin Sotelo, the younger brother, was charged with accessory after the fact to murder. So once again, he was 18 years old at the time. He was living in Winston-Salem. So we do know when he entered the country illegally. It was in 2019 when he was a minor. So the first time he was arrested crossing the border, he was returned to Mexico. The second time he was released into the U.S. with a notice to appear for April 2023. And, since he was arrested before that, I believe we can expect him to be deported after the end of his court proceedings. And if he's found guilty, whatever punishment he might be sentenced to for accessory after the fact. And what is even crazier to me about this whole story with these four illegal aliens who are all associated with this murder is that they were living in our country and our state illegally, but they had numerous contacts with law enforcement. And these contacts they had been these two brothers who have been charged with murder. Between the two of them, they had been cited 17 times by local law enforcement departments, primarily here in Wake County. And the most common of those charges was no operator's license. They were driving around our county, our state, with no driver's license. They were repeatedly pulled over and cited for having no driver's license, but none of that resulted in them being deported. Okay, maybe if they had been deported, this tragic murder would not have happened. But they are allowed to keep driving around our state, no operator's license. They are also cited. No registration, no tag, no whatever. So apparently, the de facto policy in Wake County is that you can violate whatever basic norms. It's very basic. Get a driver's license before you go drive on our roads. Get insurance. Get a tag properly. Apparently, illegal aliens are allowed to flout this and just not do it, and they can keep getting pulled over and pulled over and pulled over, and there are no consequences. So once again, those are our stories for the week. You can find the sources at thisweekinthetriangle.com. You can also get the weekly email newsletter, where I also, where I write about this news that is happening in North Carolina. So if you've joined us, I really appreciate it, and I will be signing off. Thank you.